Mexico is getting really rich, long overlooked as an engine of growth. Recent years have seen the country hailed as a potential top performer and a hotspot for accelerated economic growth. Spanish news outlet El País spelt out the bewilderment of experts last year as Mexico continued to post a GDP growth rate of between 3% to 4% following the pandemic. Tectonic shifts in geopolitics and global markets have been taking place, and a lot of Mexico's success in it is due to its increasingly profitable trade relationship with the United States through a tectonic new strategy known as nearshoring. The United States has long depended on China for trade and manufacturing. However, with growing tensions between the two countries, American comfort is slowly shifting to its next best option and potential most strategic partner for the future, a partner that's literally right at its doorstep. How is Mexico benefiting from this political jargon between the US and China? And are there even more opportunities beyond this that Mexico is securing to cement its tremendous future growth opportunities? Let's find out. This is another Republic exclusive. Chapter 1, Post-Pandemic Growth. Okay, so we'll get back to the United States, China, and nearshoring real soon. First of all, we need to acknowledge the fact that for a middle-income country that was hit hard by the pandemic, Mexico is now doing quite well. It's currently being able to consistently post a sustainable 3 to 4% GDP growth rate, which is nothing short of remarkable. It's even more remarkable when you consider the fact that throughout the past century going into the modern day, Mexico has been weighed down by civil unrest, corruption, excessive centralized control, and the effects of large-scale international drug trade. According to El País, the recent record-breaking growth figures resulted from policies introduced during President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's administration. These were a whole host of policy changes under his center-left government that involved labor reforms and social security measures. On the grand strategy side, a carefully managed fiscal policy allowed the country to keep a low debt-to-GDP ratio held in Mexican pesos that has allowed the currency to remain stable in comparison to the US dollars. This stability has done much to attract foreign investments over the years with the confidence that their Mexican pesos won't be worthless. Investors love stability more than anything. By September 2023, both public and private investments hit record highs. Public investment surged by 21% and private investment by 19.7% compared to the same period last year. Because believe it or not, this growth is the result of Mexico now having the status of being the United States' chief trading partner. On the social side of things, the labor reforms and reorganization of Mexico's social protection systems allowed the already industrious and hardworking Mexican population to live healthier lives and achieve better financial stability. This is all thanks to President Obrador campaigning very strongly on wealth distribution and efficient taxation. We know that the president isn't exactly a shining beacon of light, facing criticisms regarding his handling of Mexico's democratic process and his apparent unwillingness to address some pressing social issues. However, the improvement of Mexico's GDP per capita and disposable income for average Mexicans under his presidency can't be denied. The proof is in the pudding. Nominal GDP per capita as of 2024 now stands at $15,000 compared to $9,000 in the 2016 to 2017 period. Projections made in 2024 forecast the figure rising to $18,500 if trends continue. From the 2016 period, that would amount to a 100% increase in GDP per capita. Can you believe that? It's predicted to be doubled. At the same time, improvements in healthcare and living standards enabled the Mexican workforce to be more productive in all aspects. It was NAFTA that opened the floodgates, and now Mexican industrial workers are A-grade contractors for all kinds of products. The country has continued its export of cars under American brands, car parts, machine tools, and aerospace components. Its other main export, petroleum, has also been brought under prudent management by the government-owned Pemex. There was a time when Mexico was heavily dependent on oil, similar to a Middle Eastern oil exporter. Today, that dependency has been reduced to about 1.3% of GDP. However, new reserves are being explored with the assistance of private firms. In all aspects, foreign direct investment continues to rise, reaching the $100 billion mark as of November 2023. With industrial activity on the up and up, let's look at Mexico's industries in further detail. Chapter 2. The Industrial Drive. Incentives to help grow local skill development and entrepreneurship in industrial activities have been key for driving resilient economic growth around the world. For Mexico, nearshoring has been that incentive. So basically, nearshoring occurs when companies shift their supply chains to a country that's close by. To understand it better, it's the opposite of offshoring, which American companies have been doing by moving their operations to China for decades now. Nearshoring is the big word with American businesses and industry now. They've essentially calculated that massive gains and savings could be made from shifting their production processes to Mexico. And they've calculated just right. Unfortunately, Mexico intermittently failed to capitalize on the industrial wave of the 19th and 20th centuries. Nevertheless, a sufficient foundation was established to help kickstart the progress we see today. Mexico experienced significant growth during the 20-year period between 1950 and 1970, as the country sought to rapidly transition from its post-feudal economic system. NAFTA in the 1990s changed everything. It made all of this super smooth and easy by taking away trade restrictions that normally apply when businesses trade with foreign countries. After NAFTA, the USMCA was signed to help nearshoring more. Both agreements ensure free and reduced tariff trade, which means that Mexico, the United States, and Canada can trade with each other and benefit from reduced or eliminated tariffs and duties for important goods. If a Mexican tech company makes products for US buyers, in some cases, they can be bought and sold without having to pay more. The inclusion of Canada means that Mexican products can also be bought there as well, doubling the reach. These agreements also cover raw materials. This means that production as a whole becomes cheaper and a whole lot easier. Starting in 1994, when NAFTA was signed, U.S. engineering giants found out that they could be saving a lot of money by moving or outsourcing production to Mexico compared to China. This has been Mexico's economic engine. At the very least, American companies save 20% of costs by nearshoring their production to Mexico. This has been a powerful economic engine for Mexico's diversified economy, and it's how Mexico benefited from free trade with the USA, even though its agricultural sector suffered losses. See, things really changed in China. It isn't the dreamland of cheap industrial labor and low overall production costs for outsourcing operations anymore. It's been a long time, and the Chinese population is on average much older, more educated, and they demand better wages. China had no hourly wage laws until 1994. Since then, it grew to an average of just under $4 per hour. But it also came with increased tariffs, taxes, and stronger regulatory interference from the Chinese Communist Party. Now, nearshoring has made paying skilled Mexican workers $4.50 an hour worthwhile. In the end, American companies get overall better results. There was also the trade war drama between the USA and China over a few years that caused tariffs and duties to rise. Importing anything made in China over to the States suddenly began to cost a whole lot more, so China wasn't cutting it anymore. Now, how exactly did Mexico benefit? Let's find out, with our focus starting on Mexico's automotive industry. Mexico has been an early witness to the rise of the automobile, but the Mexican Revolution would delay things. It was only in the 1920s that Buick and Ford would establish production facilities for their vehicles in Mexico. In 1961, Mexican authorities took a fateful decision when they required foreign car manufacturers to comply with new regulations and obligations to help localize manufacturing within Mexico. As a result of this new requirement, American car manufacturers complied, along with Volkswagen, which became one of the trusted automobile names in the country. This was the start of Mexico's industrial production ventures, and by the 2000s, the country's supply chains became extremely important to the production process of the American automotive industry, amounting to 23% of cars produced in North America as a whole. So it's pretty safe to say at this point, without Mexican production, we probably wouldn't be driving a lot of the vehicles that are on the road right now. Starting from the 2010s, European and Korean car manufacturers began establishing agreements to build assembly plants in Mexico. Despite the pandemic shock, the industry has continued to expand steadily, thanks to the resilience of entrepreneurs and the skilled workforce. This made 2023 one of record export years for the automotive industry of Mexico. Conversely, the expansion of the robotics and electronics sectors has been the most significant. By 2023, Mexico's electronics exports to the U.S. had surpassed $85 billion. Consider this. Many major companies like Samsung, Intel, and HP have long since taken advantage of NAFTA, and now USMCA, to outsource their production processes to a growing and young skilled Mexican workforce. Over decades, this workforce has now grown to be a quality juggernaut. So now, this experience in electronics has allowed the country to create a niche for itself in the medical device manufacturing industry, which has grown to $6.6 billion in 2023. Mexico's medical electronics equipment hub is located in the city of Tijuana, in the state of Baja California. Medtronic and Johnson & Johnson are some of the major companies in this global niche that rely heavily on Mexican expertise. These are just some examples, but trends for all of these industries have continued to be on the up and up, allowing Mexico to maintain a favorable trade balance. As you can see, Mexican industrial manufacturing often operates in a contractor and outsourcing capacity, with their goods typically serving as critical components for products sold by companies in other countries. Even though the country has so far been lacking in the kind of entrepreneurship that would see the rise of valuable domestic brands, Mexico still has strong skill, education, and supply chain bases. The nearshoring trend is expected to continue as the value of Chinese goods continues to rise with the simultaneous rise of high-value Chinese corporations. It's been nothing but good news for the industries in northern Mexico. In fact, the northern region is the richest per capita area in the country now. These are Mexican states such as Nuevo León, Coahuila, and Sonora right along Baja California, where Tijuana is located. All of these states border the United States. Nuevo León stands out as a prime manufacturing hub of skilled workers with a per capita GDP of $17,911 in 2019. In comparison, the entire country's per capita GDP at the time was just $9,960. That's about 1.8 times more than the average. Also by 2019, the state has had 199 foreign investment projects from the United States alone. Sweetening the deal is the streamlined highway connection to the border towns of Laredo and McAllen in Texas. And this is where neighboring states in Mexico are headed. For spreading the gains out to the rest of the country, other big steps are being taken too. Chapter 3. Infrastructure Projects. Mexico is a vast country spanning around 761,000 square miles. Connecting this extensive territory, which includes diverse biomes like deserts and tropical forests, is a major challenge. However, to proactively boost economic productivity and create pathways for increased opportunities, the country needs to invest in and maintain robust transport infrastructure. By ensuring efficient and reliable transportation networks, Mexico can better connect its diverse regions, facilitate smoother trade, and attract more investment. That's why when President Obrador came into office in 2018, he announced a collection of several infrastructure projects intended to increase connectivity throughout the country. The crown jewel among these is the Mayan train connecting the southern states of Yucatan, Quintana Roo, Campeche, Tabasco, and Chiapas. It's a 966-mile-long line, providing much-needed connectivity to a part of the country that, in the past, didn't have much of it. As of 2024, the line has opened partially, but when it's fully operational, the Mayan train is expected to carry 3 million passengers a year with 42 trains. By the sound of the name, you might be guessing that tourism is also a focus of this project, and you'd be right. Tourism currently accounts for around 8.5% of the Mexican GDP and has been vital to the prosperity of many of the country's seaside settlements. The southern Mexican states of Yucatan, Quintana Roo, and Campeche are growing tourist hotspots. The project is set to bring over some of that to lesser-known Mayan heritage sites in Campeche, Tabasco, and Chiapas. As a side note, we should also note that Quintana Roo has received a new international airport located in the town of Tulum. It goes hand in hand with the rail project to boost tourism, and it'll also boost commercial and industrial sectors along with it. Despite worries regarding the rail project's environmental impacts and whether or not it may put at risk the same heritage sites it's trying to promote, proponents are optimistic. They repeatedly emphasized that the project would turn the Mexican South's once neglected ethnic Mayan villages into thriving population centers and create 500,000 jobs. The true impact of the project remains to be seen after all of its lines become operational and some time passes. But President Obrador's most important infrastructural undertaking is probably the Interoceanic Corridor. It's an ambitious project that looks to cut through the difficult terrain of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. To clarify, an isthmus is a narrow strip of land between two large bodies of water. For better perspective, consider the Panama Canal, which crosses the Panama Isthmus. It's a strategically significant landform, acting as a narrow land bridge that connects North and South America, with the Panama Canal cutting through it to facilitate maritime trade between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. This corridor won't be as difficult as the one in Panama, however, as it will basically only be a road and rail network connecting two ports, Coatzacoalcos in the state of Veracruz and Salina Cruz in the state of Oaxaca. The idea of this sort of corridor was long held as a dream for vitalizing the Mexican economy, as well as bringing prosperity to the south of the country. However, the previous administrations of Ernesto Zedillo and Enrique Peña Nieto failed to come up with anything that could have worked. This current corridor project was launched in 2018 along with the Mayan train, and it looks toward bringing back to life a century-old rail project started under the administration of President Porfirio Diaz, which was later abandoned due to the violence of the Mexican Revolution. In many ways, you can think of this project as a way to right the wrongs of past Mexican history, and of course, finally bring prosperity to a long-neglected part of the country. The line is a distance of about 188 miles for both the road and rail components. The rail component is expected to consist of multiple lines, with one line already being open as of 2024. Of course, the corridor would work by allowing for the shipment of unloaded goods from one port to the other in an efficient way. It's not the same as having a direct water-based canal like the Panama Canal, but it's still set to be a major booster of trade in the Central American region. Mexico simply plans to be the next one to benefit big time by being a facilitator. The project isn't just limited to the road and rail network, as areas are being set aside for industrial parks. Once fully operational, Mexico expects the project to not only be an economic corridor, but also work as a growth-spurring engine for building sea-related industries to prop up within the country. President Obrador has presented it as a competitor to the Panama Canal, especially given the crisis it faced in 2023 due to drought. On the other hand, Panamanian experts believe that it won't be a direct competitor. Panamanian economist Felipe Argote stated that an alternative to the Panama Canal wouldn't be a threat, as there is ample demand for ships. Instead, it would likely help alleviate the excess demand rather than significantly reduce its traffic. We see it as Mexico creating its own niche. The Panama Canal will always remain in relevance as its benefit of direct ship transit will forever remain lucrative for global trade. With the Interoceanic Corridor, though, Mexico stands a good chance at driving international trade traffic within Mexico and will hopefully benefit average Mexicans in the process. Upgrading the ports as part of the project may also create possibilities in the future so that Mexico can develop a strong civil marine sector. The project has had $2.8 billion invested into it already, with much more planned. All this development is well and good, but making all of this work is going to depend on more factors. Chapter 4: Remittances and Return Migration. So far, we've thoroughly discussed how the Mexican economy is built strong on multiple fronts: good macroeconomic management, industrial expansion, nearshoring benefits, and infrastructure development. What we can't ignore, however, are remittances, which are another important lifeline of the Mexican economy. Remittance is the money that's sent by a worker or a diaspora member back to their country of origin. This remittance cash doesn't have anything to do with investments or business by themselves, but having these remittances sent from a strong currency to a developing country by workers back to their families can really change lives. You see, a developing country spending a lot to industrialize and take off needs to have a proper balance of payments. Balance of payments is an economic term for the difference between money going in and out of a country. For example, if Guatemala wants to buy necessary oil from Mexico, then they must have US dollar reserves to do it. Going back to Mexico, the importance of a good balance of payments can be seen in the way they pay for their labor-friendly policies. Now, most of the remittance flow into Mexico is from the United States. In 2023, $63.3 billion in remittances were received by families thanks to the hard work being done by a family member just north of the border. It's a rising trend as Mexicans in the United States continue achieving more success. There's no shortage of research on why remittances are good for economic life. They help reduce poverty, improve quality of life, increase welfare, and so on. The best thing about remittances is that they're often sent to help support loved ones back home when times get tough. This is what kept Mexicans going through some of the hardest periods in its political history and through tough times when it comes to law and order. But there needs to be a balance. There's always a fear for Mexico because when remittances overflow, the Mexican peso gains value. That makes foreign direct investment costlier. It's a problem that's a matter of careful management, and so far, things look great. Side by side with remittances, return migration is another factor to be considered. This is about Mexicans who go back to their home country from, for example, the United States or Spain, by their own will. Usually they do this because they feel their experience or education gained abroad will serve them more benefit in their home country. So in a way, return migration of this kind can frequently mean people with better education and resources are coming back home. If you're one of those people, there are a load of things that you can do with this skill and education advantage, like starting a business or adding yourself to a professional workforce. As a group, this demographic can become an economic and intellectual elite. It's the basis of a dual approach to becoming a rich country with what we've been discussing. Tying this all together, imagine skilled Mexicans returning home to help grow a skilled overall workforce. Then this higher skill workforce would then be employed for high-value nearshoring projects, helping the country industrialize further. Then, hopefully the government does their part by maintaining a decent labor policy, countrywide connectivity projects, and remains fiscally responsible. This then connects all of Mexico closer together through infrastructure projects to try and fight regional inequality and have the entire country become richer in the process. In Mexico's case, this basically means the wealth would be more equally spread out, instead of just in the northern states. And that, my friends, is the formula which is set to finally make Mexico a rich country as a whole. And it's been a long time coming. The arrival of a new country that's becoming more widely recognized for its economic prominence changes the face of global trade. For example, there was a time during which it was unthinkable that South Korea could have had any sort of real impact upon the world. Lo and behold, Hyundais, Kias, Daewoo's, K-pop, and K-dramas are everywhere. In the same way, a Mexico that's economically strong and capable of playing a key role in global supply chains is a Mexico that can offer its neighbors near limitless opportunities for cooperative economic prospects. Enjoyed this Republic video? Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Also, be sure to hit one of these thumbnails to dive right back into more fascinating content.